Members, good morning. It's the second meeting of the Bills Committee on Air Pollution Control Amendment Bill 2024. Let us first talk about the arrangements. We have a rather long meeting today, running from 9 a.m. to a quarter to 1 p.m. We may not have to use the full length of the meeting today. After receiving submissions, the government has responded to the submissions, and the exchange between the LSD and the administration, as well as policy issues afterwards, will start clause by clause scrutiny. If things go well, we hope that we can finish the scrutiny of the bill today. This is the last legislative year of this term. There are a lot of bills still waiting in line. I hope that we can finish the work of the Bills Committee so that we have sufficient time to handle other important bills. In the meantime, let us first invite the administration to join us. Good morning. We have three departments. First of all, we have Mr. Alan Low, Deputy Secretary for Environment and Ecology, Dr. Sunny Zhang, Assistant Director of Environmental Protection, Mr. Alan Lai, Senior Government Counsel from the DOJ. I'd like to invite the administration to first of all walk us through the paper issued to members before the meeting. In relation to the 5 written submissions received or the opinions made by the legal advisor, I'll give the floor to you. DS. Thank you, Chairman. I'll give the floor to the EPD. Thank you, Chairman. We have consulted the DOJ in relation to the comments made by members at the last meeting. The subject matter of the bill and the subject matter of the clause to which it relates does not cover matters in relation to the provisional permission or license. As the views are not directly relevant to the subject matter of the bill and that of the clause to which it relates, it does not comply with the rules of procedure. However, we do agree with members on the SP license renewal application. In mid-November 2024, we already put in place a series of enhancement measures. We also held workshops to go through the details of the measures. The trade is positive about the implementation of these streamlining measures. We'll continue to maintain a close dialogue with the trade. In due course, we'll take stock of the application renewal process. Speaker of mic, Dr. Lo Wai-Kwok. We want to provide better flexibility to the Director of the Environmental Protection Department. We also want to make it convenient for the trade. If there are other ways to achieve this purpose, we welcome it. It's somewhat difficult to incorporate this element to the long title, given our stage of the Bills Committee right now. I understand that. We don't want to catch innocent people inadvertently. I hope the administration will provide assistance to the trade whenever we can expedite the application process. Thank you. Does the administration have any more response to Dr. Lo's views? I thank Dr. Lo for your reviews. We will conduct reviews in the future. In relation to the provisional mechanism of permission or license, there is a written submission, or rather a written reply. Between the first and the second meeting of the Bills Committee, we have invited the public to submit written submissions. We have received 5 written submissions in all, including one submission submitted to the Bills Committee after the meeting on the 29th of November 2024. This is a restricted document. The administration will, in a moment, provide a consolidated written response to the written submissions received. Do you have any response right now? Have you had a good understanding of all the written submissions received? Well, I can provide a simple response. 3 of the 5 written submissions received expressed views over the closure notice mechanism. They are supportive of the mechanism, and they also think that the amendment can help them to address the unlicensed operation of cement plants. We welcome these submissions. This amendment serves as an effective legal means to call a halt to specified processes SP, together with the views on the AOQ. Will provide a consolidated written response later. When will it be made available? In a few days, within next week? Yes, it should be all right. Thank you, Mr. Alan Lowe. Regarding the written submissions provided by the public, well, I can see members having pressed a button. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong and Mr. Tong Ni-te, 4 minutes. Mr. Chen, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. In relation to public written submissions, a few written submissions express positive views. They support the introduction of closure notice, CN. They can help with enforcement actions. In the written submissions, however, there are views that there should be more aggressive target in relation to AOQ. Say those in relation to nitrogen dioxide. This was actually discussed during the panel meeting. We may consider it together. The administration doesn't have to wait for a couple of days before they get back to us. Can you tell us the factors you have considered? Thank you, Mr. Chan. Mr. Alan Lowe? Regarding AOQ, we attach a lot of importance to the health of the public, but at the same time, we need to review the standards. We need to take into account the relaxation of the standards and its impact on society. In Japan, Korea, Singapore, we do not pale by comparison. They are advanced economies as well. We can provide detailed information later. will provide a more detailed written response in relation to a written submission received. In relation to the standard of nitrogen dioxide, there is background information. The World Health Organization has updated the relevant guidelines. I'd like to ask Dr. Ng to give you more information. The guidelines are in relation to nitrogen dioxide and ozone. There are two different standards. We recommend three standards per hour, per day, and per year. According to the standards we have, the per hour standard has reached that of the WHO. So why don't we further tighten the standard in relation to the per year target? In the AQO review, we'll take into account the suggestions of the WHO. And in 2021, the standard was 40. We already met the standard of the WHO. This time around, it has been tightened. As Mr. Alan Low mentioned, for other advanced economies, they also adopt the same interim target or interim indicator. We'll continue to conduct reviews. So in the next AQO review, we'll take stock of the situation to see if we can make further adjustments in relation to the indicator of nitrogen dioxide. Mr. Chen, thank you. At the panel meeting, we expressed concern over this topic. We also understand what the administration thinks. The compliance costs are at play. There may be technical difficulties, BPM, that is best practical means. The explanation given at last meeting was more detailed. I look forward to more detailed response. The effectiveness of the AQO is close to the heart of the public. We want to strike a balance between environmental protection and economic development. If we tighten the standard to meet the interim target of the WHO, will we bring about positive impacts on health? We will also bring about positive impacts on operation. Will it give rise to an increase in the cost of operation? We need to give the public a better understanding. That is my first point. Well, Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd like to follow up. There were written submissions expressing the view that the findings the written submissions are supportive. Do you have any plan to systematically report the written submissions to let the public know what submissions are supportive and what views the administration is going to respond to? Yes, we can make public the relevant information. We welcome the public to provide suggestions and views. We conduct this review every 5 years. Now that we have received public submissions, we'll let the public know the grounds on which we accept the submissions. Where will you announce the analysis? We can provide the background information in the next meeting. Well, do you mean 5 years later? No, not 5 years later. Do you mean as soon as possible? During the scrutiny of the bill, ideally you should have consolidated all the written submissions that you have received. You need to respond to written submissions. Yes, no problem. Within 2 to 3 weeks, we'll consolidate the information. We provided brief responses at the last panel meeting. For detailed information, we'll provide in the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Tony Jie, thank you, Chairman. I have some comments on the submissions. I would like to provide my personal views, and I hope that the administration can consider them in preparing the written response. First, concerning about the suggestions from the Kwun Tong District Council, they suggested that there should be some devices installed onto the cement mixer vehicles so as to monitor the routes or the way of such vehicles. Personally, I think that this suggestion should take into account the practicalities. But I think for some GPS positioning that should be conducted, I think this will enhance the government to conduct enforcement actions and also to collect more information. So personally, I support this suggestion. Because right now, we are putting emphasis on the use of INT. This is the first point. Secondly, it is the suggestion made by a Yuen Long District Council member about the operation of scrap plastics and also metals. I hope that the administration will provide information on the enforcement actions against such illegal operations taken in the past. Please provide us with some enforcement statistics and also on the number of prosecution cases and the results, if these are available. Also, there is a submission from the Clean Air Act, the Clean Air Network. They suggested that we should take into account the guidelines provided by the WHO concerning health. I have some reservation on this suggestion. I think the Secretary, during the review of the AQOs, I think the Secretary has already taken into account such as suggested factors. So I hope that there will be some clarifications. On the timetable for meeting the AQOs, I think it is difficult to state that down precisely in the legislation, but I hope that through the administrative measures, the administration can have some concrete targets. You should have some targets and some timetable that will enable your work too. I would like to know about the targets set by the administration and the administrative actions to be taken. Chairman, I think we're now talking about KPIs. I think these are also KPIs. So I support that the government should establish some indicators or targets for itself. Any response from the government? Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your suggestion. We will take that into consideration when we go back, and we will provide a written response to members in due course. Thank you. So will the response cover the points raised by Mr. Tony Jie about the timetable for meeting the AQOs? And also there will be GPS positioning devices to be installed on the tankers. So will you take follow-up action? Would that be included in the written response? Yes. Mr. Chair, do you have any follow-up actions? No, thank you, Chair. I think if a timetable is available, so it will be beneficial for us to follow up. So I would like to express my views first. Next, Dr. Naman Yu. Chairman, I hope that in the written response, the administration will include a response regarding the suggestion by the Kwun Tong District Council. That is whether some of the concrete will be dropped onto the floor from the concrete mixers that is along the Charcoal Lane Road and also close to the area of Yao Tong Lane. I think anytime if you go there, you will see that there is a lot of concrete materials on the road. So I would like to know how many enforcement actions have been taken, any prosecution has been taken, and which department will be responsible for clearing up the cement slur. So I would like to have such information in the written response so that we can revert to the Kwun Tong District Council. Administration? No problem, Chairman. We have the statistics available. We will include them in the written response in one go, responding to the questions raised by Dr. Ngan. So, members, do you have any points regarding the written submissions? Any questions? If not, I note that some colleagues have raised concerns, and I will try to summarize them. And I hope that the administration will clearly include the response in the reply. The first one is about the amendment bill. What consultation exercise have you been concluded, and what are the consultation results? Please give us a response. Next, about the update of the AQOs. What is the administration's assessment on the economic cost on society because of such updates? So if the AQOs can be achieved, what will be the impact on our economy as a whole? Third, is there a timetable for achieving that? The updated AQOs. Fourthly, there is a suggestion from a Yuen Long District Council member. How are you going to respond to the points raised by this councillor? Do you have to wait until the bill has been enacted before you can take action, or you can take action right away now? And also, the district council from Kwun Tong has met with the legislative councillors, and they have raised some points. So two members have raised points. First is about the installation of GPS devices on the cement mixer vehicles. And second, about the nuisances caused by these vehicles. That is the slurry dropped from such vehicles on the roads, and which department will be responsible for cleaning them up. So there is a list of issues. Is it possible to let us have a written response next week to all of the issues? Well, Chairman, members have raised quite a number of questions, and some of the questions are new. We have prepared some of the responses. Those are related to the written submissions. But for further points, we may need some time. Chairman, I think we will try to provide some information to members next week. If there is time required for gathering further statistics, please allow us to have a few more days for compiling them. I don't think you should take a long time to do that. Can you give us the response within 10 days? Yes, that's possible. Any further comments, questions from members? If not, I would like to ask members again, do you have any further questions on the policy issues relating to the amendment bill, policy matters? If there are none, I think we will move on to the clause-by-clause examination stage. I have a suggestion after consulting our legal advisor. You can see that the legal advisor has raised some points from the legal perspective, and the administration has provided a written response. So these exchanges and the relevant papers have been sent to members and are also uploaded for public information. So when we move on to the clause-by-clause stage, the legal advisor will raise the relevant points as appropriate. So these papers are for reference at this stage. So let's look at the Chinese version of the amendment bill. So would the administrations please take us through the clauses? Thank you, Chairman. Morning, members. For the preamble of the amendment bill, there are actually 7 objectives. First, we want to amend the air pollution control bill, and we want to update the AQOs. Also, we want to empower the Secretary for the Environment and Ecology so as to amend the AQOs by Gazette. Thirdly, for contravention of Clause 13 of the bill, that is the operation that are unlicensed, that will be powerful as to go against them. Also, we want to revise the scope of cement works and the definition of premises. And for some of the offences, we will provide defense of emergency for such offences. 6, we want to extend the period for making applications to renew license for the conduct of specified processes. And seventhly, lastly, is to provide for consequential and related amendments. As I have said before, there are 7 parts, but there are 25 clauses in total, and they are divided into 4 parts. The first is about the interpretation and the introduction. That is the preliminary of the bill. It is the ordinance may be cited as the Air Pollution Control Amendment Ordinance 2024, and the commencement date will be the 11th of April 2025. For the parts 2 to 4, the objective is to amend the relevant legislation, and I will walk members through the clauses. For part 2, it is amendments to the Air Pollution Control Ordinance. So members can refer to the markup copy of the paper, that is paper CB bracket 11644/2024 bracket 01. So this paper has provided the markup amendments for members' reference. For example, there may be some additions, there may be the addition of a new section, and for certain parts there may be deletions of the existing provisions. So these amendments are all clearly stated in the markup copy. So members, please refer to this paper for discussion, CB1 1644/2024 bracket 01. That's the paper number. For part 1, do members have any questions? Mr. Tong Yize? Chairman, for part 1, clause 1, it is about the commencement day, which is the 11th of April 2025. So what is the rationale for setting this commencement date? Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just try to follow the sequence of events. If the amendment bill can be examined clause by clause, there will be the second and third reading of the bill, and we look at the timetable for the Legislative Council meeting. So by end of March or early April, the bill may be passed. So we just try to follow the sequence of events and the timetable. So there is no particular reason for choosing a particular date for the commencement. Well, we all hope that we can have the bill enacted as soon as possible, but you have now chosen a specific date. If there are unforeseen circumstances, you will have to amend the commencement date. So have you taken that into account? It seems that you have assessed and calculated the timetable, but I think we all want to have this proposed amendments taken forward as soon as practicable. We're sorry for interrupting you, but I hope that you would not be tying your hands yourself, because there may be some unforeseen circumstances that will delay the process. Can we provide some flexibility and not to defer the commencement date?
when we set out a concrete commencement date, this is one way to do it. The next way is to provide for a legal commencement notice. Which one is more flexible? Why have you opted for this practice? As we mentioned, we just see the council meeting dates, and this is the fastest council meeting day we have in mind. If members think that there may be better and more flexible means, then we won't carve out the commencement date in stone on this occasion. But this date is what we have in mind. That is the fastest council meeting during which we will handle this one. Let me supplement, Chairman. These two practices are in practice as well. As Dr. Zhang mentioned, we want to introduce this bill to the Council as soon as possible, but we also want to allow some time to handle any unexpected situations. At the same time, we need to give certainty to the public and the trade to let them know when this will come into operation. Having considered all these, we think having the date set on the 11th of April is a safe means. We will soon go to talk about the transitional period. If members have any particular views, we're willing to listen to members. At present, we think it is a safer means to settle the date as the 11th of April. Mr. Tongite, well, you can consider allowing flexibility. You can settle this date in the bill, but you can also settle in the bill that the director or the secretary can amend the date or settle the date by way of notice in the Gazette. You are going to use negative vetting. Will you consider allowing greater flexibility by means of textual amendments? Well, we'll study this issue with the DOJ. Thank you. Dr. Lo Kwok. The Legislative Council has its own practice. Members understand that we want to pass this bill as soon as possible. For government departments, it is not appropriate to assume something must definitely happen on a particular day. So the administration shouldn't assume that this will take place on the council meeting on the 11th of April. You don't have to set up a date. Probably this will take place sooner. So is it necessary to settle the concrete date in the bill? You want to pass the bill as soon as possible. Well, I think you may consider amending the words to make it more flexible. We'll consider it. Thank you. Legal advisor, in relation to the commencement of the bill, there are three situations. One, when there is no date specified in the bill. According to Cap 1, Section 20, the bill will come into operation on the date of Gazetted. In the second situation, there is a specified commencement date, as is this case. The bill will come into operation on the date set out. The other way is to empower the relevant secretary to announce a commencement date by notice in the Gazette, on which day the bill will come into operation. The administration may have its own reasons for choosing which way to go with, and members can decide whether or not you will accept the practice adopted by the administration. Dr. Low, regarding the first practice mentioned by the legal advisor, that is actually what I suggest. Regarding commencement dates in general, the trade isn't too much concerned about this area. That doesn't have much of an impact on their operation. If you don't set out a particular date, it will be safer, and it is also in line with your practice. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Low and the other member, that is Mr. Tony Che's views, are worth consideration. It is best to allow flexibility, as members have mentioned. Probably we may have to spend longer time on the details of the bill, so we may not be able to make it on the 11th of April 2025. In case there are amendments, we may not be able to handle this bill at the council meeting on the 11th of April 2025. There are uncertainties, but now that we have already set it out in the bill, that is, the bill will come into operation on the 11th of April 2025, one way to handle it is to make amendments. We want to send a message to the public that we are serious with the clause-by-clause scrutiny. We examine wording in great detail. Under the leadership of the chairman of the Bills Committee, we scrutinized the bill at full steam. We have 4 hours today, so depending on the progress of the meeting today, we may be able to judge whether this date, that is the 11th of April, is viable. If need be, we may move committee stage amendments, CSA. We may amend the date or to change such that the bill will come into operation when it is gazetted. We may first start the scrutiny of the bill, and depending on the progress, we'll see whether this date is possible. The administration just now mentioned they want to pass this bill as soon as possible. You also want to let the trade know exactly when this bill will come into operation. If we can pass this bill as early as in February, then it would actually be better. But is it not as good? Do you still want to pass this bill in April? We want to plug some loopholes. We'll come to these later on. It's in relation to closure notice. We want to do this as soon as possible. So if we can finish all the work on the 11th of March, it will be even better. Is that the case? Well, Chairman, as I mentioned, we consulted the trade earlier. We exchanged views in relation to the timeline. This bill targets gray areas or unlicensed SPs. In relation to the definition of cement works, for smaller scale operation, it may be affected. So probably we'll have to give the trade some time for adaptation. The department also needs some time to prepare for the operation of the bill. If things go very well before the 11th of April, can we advance it? Well, there will be room, but I do not think that there will be much room for advancing it. Say in February, I don't think this is appropriate, as we discussed it with the trade. It also needs some time to make preparation. Not just the non-compliant operations will be affected. Mr. Chen, any supplements? Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to add. We do want to pass the bill as soon as possible as well, now that there are uncertainties and there is a chance that it could be advanced. Let's not spend a long time discussing this part. You may discuss with the DOJ to change the commencement date. It could be made simpler. The time will be flexible. And by amending this part, we don't have to come back to this point later on. We don't necessarily have to carve in stone a commencement date. As Mr. Chen said, we want to discuss the principal ordinance. Members have different considerations. And I haven't yet seen a consensus. All of us just want to prevent hiccups. We also want to respect the Council's right to scrutinize the bill. These are different perspectives. We may consider whether or not we will have to make amendments. So you may consider it after the meeting. Thank you, no problem. Then let us get to part 2. We're going to discuss the principal ordinance. If you have read news, you'll know some operators are in judicial proceedings. So when you set examples, please do not refer to the details. Let's focus on the legal provisions as well as policy issues in general. Thank you. I'll give the floor to the administration. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to talk about Clause 3. Under the APC ordinance, we'll make amendment to the definition of premises. As you can see, we have added brackets B. The reason is that we want to add ships and barges. In relation to cement works, under the existing provision, we are only regulating those on land. But actually, the trade encourages regulation over activities at sea as well. So in this ordinance, we have propose to add bracket B to add ships as well as barges.
Mr. Chen Shihong. Thank you, Chairman. On the additions, mainly on Part B, it is about the inclusion of ship or barge. I noticed that you are amending the definition of premises. For bracket A1, you include a place, a building, or the relevant plant. And during the earlier discussion, we have come across some examples that we want to prevent people try to reduce the total capacity to below 50 tons, and they use mobile devices, and they even use concrete mixers to get around the total capacity. So I would like the administration to clarify. You talked about the premises, a place, or a building or relevant plant. Will this include also the mobile devices and then also some cement mixes? Will they be covered as well? Thank you, Mr. Chan, for the question. During the latter part of the amendment bill, when we talk about the definition of cement works, we will try to explain more about how we calculate the 50-ton capacity. Maybe I'll have further explanation during discussion of this part. But here, I want you to clarify. So you are talking about all the devices that are connected to the barge or they are connected to the mixer, then they will be counted, right? Yes. But for the clauses, you try to use the term premises. So for the definition of premises, would it be unclear? What will be regarded as temporary or whether some installations will be connected? Mr. Chen, when we go to clause 30C, for the subject premises, we will have a clear definition as to how to calculate the capacity. That is, when we issue the license, when we talk about subject premises, we will have a clear definition. That's exactly my question. Premises. If you use the concept of premises, you may be thinking of about a plant and a place and some installations, and they try to apply for a license for a specified process. And then under some circumstances, you may consider that it is non-compliant. Then you would use these new provisions to issue a closure notice. So I would like to know whether the license will specify the installations and the exact premises and what is meant by fulfilling the requirements. If they suddenly try to include another silo or they try to connect a vehicle temporarily, then that part will be outside the coverage of the license. So it is outside the scope of the license. So maybe they just park the vehicle close to the road. So will the definition of premises cover such situation, that is devices or vehicles that are connected? Because if they are connected, then the total capacity will be over 50 tons. So have you taken into account such scenarios? Will you just look at the geographical area that is falling outside the specifications of the license, or you take these issues into account? Well, when we go to clause 30C, we talk about the subject premises. And when they apply for a license from us, they would have to give us a parameter of the premises, and that will be defined as the subject premises. If the vehicle is parked outside the premises, then it will fall outside the licensed area. Well, sometimes the area may not be big enough to house all the concrete mixers. So the concrete mixers who are queuing to enter into the premises, they will not be counted when we calculate the total capacity. So we only count those vehicles that are inside the premises and they are connected to some of the devices. Whether they are mobile or whether they are connected, that will be counted. Well, Chairman, under this scenario, I would like to clarify whether my understanding is correct. So for an SP license, you have a subject premises. But if the vehicles are outside the subject premises, if they are parked on the public roads, but then they have a pipe connecting the concrete mixer to the installations. So how are you going to deal with such situation? Will you use other legislation to prosecute them for, say, blocking the public road? Any response from the administration? Well, Chairman, let's look at the practical situation. We haven't seen a situation whereby a vehicle will be connected through a very long pipe to the premises. So for the cement materials, they have to be injected into the silos, and you would need a high pressure jet for that. So you cannot just pull a pipe from the premises to the outside road and connect to the concrete mixer. That is quite impracticable because the pump of the vehicle will have to have very high pressure in order to pump the cement materials through this very, very long pipe into the silo within the premises. Well, Chairman, I understand that. Actually, I would like to make a declaration because I'm a senior consultant of the CLP, and this legislation may impact on our daily operations, so I would like to make a declaration. Secondly, I understand that right now, the current technology, you may think that it is not possible to use high pressure pumps and very long pipes to connect the vehicles and the premises. But with the advance of technology, in future, you don't know what will happen. So the definition of premises should be enlarged to cover more scenarios. I know there are two sides to a coin. If you try to carve out some of the elements from the definition of premises, that may give rise to enforcement issues. But for the scenario that I have just mentioned, if that really happens in future, then if it is possible for them to make use of new technology whereby they park the vehicle further away from the premises, but then they are connected to the installations and facilities there. So how are you going to deal with that? Well, Chairman, I think you have asked about 2 to 3 rounds of questions about the scenario. Can we have a response from the administration before we move on to another member? Well, Chairman, if they have no concrete response, maybe they can provide information in due course, but I want them to look into this issue. Well, Chairman, I think the situation that Mr. Chen mentioned can happen where a vehicle is parked further away from the licensed premises. But it may also be possible to have another building, say building A and building B, and you try to connect them with a very long pipe. Well, actually, this will not be allowed under the law because in that situation, then the license grant is only for building A, but part of the cement works, the operation is being conducted in building B, and they try to connect the two through pipes, and then it is against the law. Well, of course, we can provide further information in due course. Next, Mr. Rincon. Thank you, Chairman. With respect, I think Mr. Chan has raised a scenario which may happen remotely because the definition of premises is quite wide under the amendment bill. Actually, a lot of things will be included under premises. I think we should also look at the situation that the word premises does not happen very much. Subject premises happen very quickly within the bill. But I would like to look at a drafting point. Chairman, for the premises, there's Part A and Part B. I think for Part A2, it is very strange because it says premises includes a part of any premises or a part of any place, building, or relevant plant. I think this is very clumsy. It is totally different from Part B. If you look at B2, for B1, it is a ship or a barge. And for Part 2, it is a part of a ship or a barge. This is very clear and concise. So can we use the drafting for B2 for drafting A2, can we just say a part of a building or a place? I think A clause 2 is very clumsy. I think we can delete the part concerning part of a place, building, or relevant plant. That part can be deleted. Administration. Well, thank you for Ms. Kong's point about drafting. For A2, we have to include a part of any place, building, or relevant plants because we want to go for clarity. If we just say any premises or any part of that, then that any part may just refer to the last part of the structure of that sentence. It does not include the earlier part of the sentence. That's why we want to make it clear. And that's why we want to say the any part will be clearly defined as any part or any part of a place, building, or relevant plant. Sorry, I beg to differ. I think the same situation can happen to B2 if that's the argument. I've never seen any ordinance that is drafted that way. Well, I don't want to waste members' time. Can the administration go back and see if you can retain the drafting? I think this is very repetitive and redundant. Well, this is a drafting point, and whether the legislation will be easy to be read by others. If we follow Ms. Kong's suggestion, we want to see whether there will be any impact on the legal effect. Thank you, Chairman. Well, I maintain my position from the drafting point of view. We want to go for clarity. We don't want to have misinterpretation of the clause. So that's why, where appropriate, we try to add the necessary wordings and parts. And that's why we try to repeat the wordings of about any parts. We think this is a very prudent way of drafting and also would not give rise to any misinterpretation or misunderstanding. Dr. Ngan? Chairman, I want to clarify one point. For A, for premises, it only covers land but not sea. Because you said any place, is sea part of any place? Thank you, Chairman. Generally, when we talk about a place, the normal understanding is that it is on land. It is a place on land. If at sea, we will have a different saying. So that's why I think we're clear. We're saying that a place is a place on land. I think in English, you use the word a place. I think generally, in Hong Kong, we would take that to mean land place. Yes, Chairman. If we look at it in context, and also if we look at the dictionary meaning, place generally would refer to a place on land. If it is a place at sea, we will state clearly that it is a place at sea. So that's why for the proposed amendment, we have included Part B. We have stated ship or barge. We added that to the bill so that it will be clearer. Thank you, Chairman. So for the purpose of the amendment bill is to facilitate enforcement. So you want to try to plug all the loopholes. I think the drafting may be a bit lengthy. You also state clearly ship or barge because you want to cover operations at sea. Yes. Dr. Ngan, a follow-up. Well, Chairman, the DOJ has clarified that a place includes a place on land. But then for the relevant plant, I want to know whether relevant plant will include a ship or a barge.
Thank you, Chairman. No, it does not cover. Why? Why is not covered? A ship should be an installation or a plant. Brackets A1, a place, building, or relevant plant. It doesn't specify that a plant needs to be built in a place. Why is zhangzi in Chinese a plant? Thank you, Chairman. In general, in the interpretation of a provision, when there is a series of items, we have a special way of interpreting the provision. We use the latter part to explain the front part. So in the interpretation of this provision, a plan needs to be in a place. That's why we have added those at sea, that is a ship or a barge. Members, any more questions or views? This is material. As the chairperson of the Bills Committee, I have a question as well. We understand why the administration needs to add a ship or a barge, but can you tell us once again, in brackets A1, a place, building, or relevant plant? Why do you have to add brackets A2? When you have brackets A1, why do you still need to add brackets A2? What policy results or what policy purposes do you want to achieve with the addition of brackets A2? It has to do with the drafting of the provision. In brackets A2, a part of this is included. So to make it clearer, we divided it into two paragraphs. That is brackets A1, a place, and so on, and then in brackets A2, a part of any premises, and so on. That is to enhance the clarity of the text in order to avoid misunderstanding. Mr. Kong, Chairman, your question is very good. My suggestion is straightforward. Dividing it into A brackets 1, 2 doesn't make it clearer. You can add a semicolon and then add or any part thereof. In cap 311, when you defined building, you did not divide it into brackets A1 and A2. Chairman, your question is very good. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Kong. If we use semicolon and then add part thereof, this may give rise to a misunderstanding. What does thereof mean? There may be many disputes. So in order to avoid these disputes, we may as well divide brackets A into brackets A1 too. That is the principle we have been upholding. We want to make it clear. We have spent quite some time on this issue. Members have already expressed their views, and the administration has heard members' views as well. If the administration thinks the current practice is the best, then so be it. But if you identify any possible enhancements, you can let us know later on. Thank you. On part 2, any more questions regarding the interpretation of premises? No, let's carry on with the clause-by-clause examination. We have added part VA. issue of closure notices for suspected contravention of Section 13. We have 30A and 30B, but they have nothing to do with Part VA, so we start with Section 30C. It explains closure notice. It refers to a notice issued under Section 30D(1). We also explained specified person. In relation to any premises used for the conduct of a specified process means the person who conducts the specified process on the premises. And we also add subject premises. The definition is in relation to a closure notice issued in respect of any premises means the premises. In relation to Section 30C, two members would like to speak. First, Mr. Dorian Kong. Thank you, Chairman. I have two questions. In relation to specified person, which is mentioned in many spots in the bill, I'd like to first of all ask about the English version. It specifies who conducts the specified process. That is in Chinese, 進行指明工序. That is conducts the specified process in English. What does it mean? Does a security guard conduct the specified process as well, or does it have to be someone who deals with cement? My next question has to do with drafting. Regarding the third item, that is subject premises, can you delete the word in relation to, or in Chinese 定義如下? In English, it means defined as follows. You don't have to add these four words in the Chinese version. It is still readable. Why do you have to add these four words in the Chinese version? Do you need these four words in every single definition under the bill? Administration, I'll take the first question. In relation to a specified person, a security guard is not covered. In relation to cement works, there is a plant room or machinery room in which there are equipment and computers. A specified person refers to the person who is responsible for the operation or the process. We refer to the person operating the computer systems, that is the supervisors or those in supervisory capacity. It doesn't refer to any person who stands next to the equipment, like a security guard. In the collection of evidence, we'll make clear we refer to the person being responsible for the operation or conducting the specified process. I'll give the floor to the DOJ in relation to the Chinese words 定義如下, that is in English, defined as follows. Thank you. In the interpretation of subject premises, it defines a situation. It provides a cohesive link. We find that it is clearer when we add these four words Chinese version when we specify a situation. Thank you. Indeed, this is rare. You add these four Chinese words in order to enhance the clarity of the interpretation. Is that correct? Right. That is because we want to specify a closure notice issued in respect of any premises. So we add four Chinese words to more clearly define this term. Well, honestly, the English version reads smoothly. However, the Chinese version seems to be a little bit wordy. On this point, Mr. Dorian Kong, do you have anything else to add? No. Thank you, Chairman. While drafting the law, we need to maintain quality. It is not the first time I mentioned this. I don't want to waste members' time. I'll write to the DOJ. I find this practice problematic. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you. I go along with Ms. Doreen Kong. We need to make our laws succinct, brief. Ms. Doreen Kong will follow up on this. If we keep these 4 Chinese words, they won't cause any problems. They won't affect enforcement actions. But from a professional perspective, there is room for improvement. I'd like to ask about the interpretation of specified person. Natural person and a company are also included. By adding Part VA to the bill, the SPs in subject premises have already applied for an SP license, but out of some reason the administration has to enter the premises in order to lock the premises. So the specified person on the subject premises refers to the holder of the specified license. But in the interpretation of specified person, it refers to the person who conducts the specified process on the premises. But actually, you are referring to the holder of the license of the specified process. At the end of the day, you are pursuing legal liabilities against the holder of the SP license. And it should be the holder of the license of the SP that will be held liable. So why don't you make it clearer in the bill? Let's not talk about the janitors. Technicians may help in the operation. So would all persons shoulder legal risks as a result of the operation of the SP? Thank you, Mr. Chen. Even if someone does not hold any license, one can still be operating an SP. That's exactly why we need to introduce this interpretation. Depending on evidence collection, we need to check which company is operating the cement works. Our target is the company. Which company is conducting these works? I'd like to seek clarifications, a natural person or a company. There are 2 situations. Situation 1, when one holds a license, but in the conduct of SP, probably one does not comply with the rules, so enforcement actions have to be taken, and you pursue the holder of the license, so it will have to be held liable. In the second situation, someone is conducting an SP without the license, or one violates the AQO or AQ indexes, then you have to catch these people. In the English version, you use a singular noun. But will all the persons involved in the SPs be held liable? Will all these people involved in the operation be held criminally liable? Thank you.
就住呢個問題就係、
Perhaps I can supplement. We are now talking about some specified process within a certain premises. So we're not just talking about an equipment or an installation. So that's why I think it is very clear that the whole premises is involved and the SP is conducted therein. And the specified person actually refers maybe to a company. Under the current license, we also refer to the company. Can we look at it that way? So natural persons and legal entity, they may also be involved because in most of the cases, all of them would have legal liability. And then also the employer behind this group of people or the people who are supporting the operators, they will be included too. Is that the case? I want the administration to be clear on this. During the subsequent clauses, you talked about that if a company breaches the license, then you can also hold the company directors liable if they are aware of the situation. But if they are ignorant, they are not aware of the situation, then the company, as a legal entity and the license holder, they would have to rely on, say, contractors or workers to conduct the operation. If they have not given the authority to do so, but they still conduct unlicensed SP, then the liability will not fall on the directors or shareholders of the company. So, is it possible for you to prosecute all of them, including people who are aware that the unlicensed SP operations are being conducted? Would they be included as well, the accomplices? So can you clarify on this point? Well, generally, as Mr. Poon has said, our target is the company. I think Mr. Chen is also correct in saying that we are covering natural persons and legal entities. We will try to collect evidence before we take enforcement action. Actually, that applies to all environmental legislation. Well, the first one caught will be the company concerned. The next question is whether the managers or the officers of the company will be involved as well. It depends on the evidence collected. They may be directed by the employer to do so. Under such circumstances, we will prosecute the company, but we do not ignore the situation that depending on whether the employees are operating the unlicensed operations themselves or they are being directed to do so, we will look at the situation. Well, it depends on the evidence that we have collected. For some cases, we prosecuted both of them, but for other circumstances, we may just prosecute the company. So it depends on the evidence collected. Well, Chairman, just a clarification. You now have a closure notice, Part 5A. So this situation would happen before the introduction of the closure notice mechanism. If there are people undertaking unlicensed operations, they will be prosecuted. You will collect evidence, and you may prosecute all of them. But this time you have included the definition of specified person, and to cover people who are in contravention of Section 13, the closure notice. So in most cases, I think you will be referring to the license holder and also the responsible person or the directors of a company. If they are aware of the situation and they breach the law blatantly, and they may ask a third party to undertake the operation, then I think they should be held liable. I think Mr. Chen is very clear. So the legal advisor has something to add too. Well, Mr. Chen has talked about two scenarios. The first one is that the license is issued and the license conditions are being breached. The second situation is that the premises is unlicensed. So members may note that for the issue of a closure notice regarding clause 30D, that is a situation whereby the closure notice will be issued. That is when an offense under Section 13 has been committed. That is the conduct of SP operations when there is no license. So under the closure notice, all the offenses cover the situation whereby the operations are being conducted without a license. If there is a license and if they breach the license conditions, then I think they will not be covered by the provisions concerning the closure notice, unless they have breached the conditions of the license whereby the administration will revoke the license. Then they will fall within the scenario that we're looking at here. So I hope members will be clear that there are actually two different scenarios, one with a license and one without a license. No further supplement. Ms. Kwong, further questions? Yes. Well, Chairman, I'm concerned about the definition of specified person, because I want to help the administration to make things clearer. If you look at clause 30D, you are going to issue a closure notice. And then you have to serve the closure notice. In 30D3, you have to do two things in order to serve a notice. You have to serve the closure notice to the specified person of the subject premises, and you also have to affix the notice as a conspicuous place on the subject premises. So you have to be clear about the specified person, because the people may argue that you serve the notice to a person who is not a specified person. So that's why, to me, specified person is very important. For the CAP 311, for people who conduct the sexual operation, it happens in many times. If you look at clause 37, it has not been amended this time. You are talking about people who are conducting the specified operation. So for the person who conduct the specified work, you are actually referring to a particular type of person, and you should have a definition for that. So that's why I asked you whether the word watchman will be included, because it depends on how you are going to serve the notice. Otherwise, you would come into difficulties. That's why I want you to have the opportunity to explain the situation to us at this Bills Committee meeting. Do you have any response to Ms. Kong's concern? I think our thinking is similar to that of Mr. Chan. Our objective is to target at the company, because the company is the specified person for the SP operation, and we will serve the closure notice to the company. I also want to reiterate that during the collection of evidence, if there is evidence to prove that other people will be involved in the unlicensed operations, then we will also issue the closure notice to that person as well. Dr. Ngan? Thank you, Chair. I've been thinking about different scenarios while hearing to the discussion just now. Well, Chairman, I have to go back to the part concerning premises. We have now added ship or barge to the definition of premises. If the ship is being operated by one company and the land operation is operated by another company, then for enforcement, does that mean that you have to serve CN to two specified persons? For the specified person operating at sea, if you look at the definition for premises, the word "and" is used. So for the person operating at sea, it may not be covered. Do you need to add the word "or" to that section? Well, there may be a situation whereby a person only operates at sea. Then this clause will not be applicable to him. Is that the case? Well, this may be a very strange scenario, but it may happen. So is that a loophole? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member. We use the word and here, but we're actually referring to different things here. Let's look at the structure. The first part is about premises. Premises A includes 1 and 2. And also it includes part B 1 and 2. So that means if you hit any one of the clauses here, you will be regarded as a premises under the definition. I'm asking whether you should use the word and or. My impression is that you should use the word or, because either part A or part B that should be regarded as premises. So you should not be using the word and between part A and B. You should use the word or between parts A and B. Right. DOJ? We are now talking about an inclusive situation. Under such a situation, we think that both A and B parts are regarded as premises under the definition. That's why we think that we should use the word and. It is appropriate. So that means not all scenarios would have to be covered before enforcement can be taken? Yes, that's correct. You're just trying to list out all the scenarios. That's correct. So, Chairman, I would like to know, when would you use the word or instead of and? Well, my Chinese is not so good, pardon me. I think we have to look at the different interpretation clauses and how they are being used. Under this situation, we think that it is appropriate to use the word and because we want to include all the different scenarios, operations on land and operations at sea. They will all be regarded as premises under the definition. So we have to look at the situation of other scenarios before we decide whether to use the word and or. So let's go back to 30C. Do members have further comments? If not, let's move on to 30D. Clause 30D gives the authority the power to issue closure notice. So for 30D1, if the authority has reasonable cause to believe that an offense under Section 13 of Cap 311 has been committed or is being committed in respect of any premises, then the authority may issue a notice in respect of the premises. For the closure notice, it is covered in 30D Clause 2. So you can see that there are parts A, B. Maybe I'll go through them. So for Clause 2A, the closure notice is to be in a specified form. So that means EPD will produce a standard form. We will be doing that. And the form will have to contain the following information stated in 2B, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first part is the name and address of the specified person of the subject premises. B2, the address or location of the subject premises, that is where the SB process is being conducted, and the location of such. We want to add a word of location because if it is at sea, the operation, then there will not be an address. So that's why we add the word or location to cover operations at sea because we may be including the coordinates at sea. B3 is a description of the specified process to which the offense relates. B4, the date on which the closure notice comes into force. And B5, the right of the specified person to apply for cancellation of the closure notice under Section 30N, which we will discuss later. And then also a person aggrieved by the closure notice to appeal under Section 31 against the decision to issue the closure notice under Cap 311. So this is the right for them to appeal. So this is Part 30D2. Maybe I'll pause here because 30D345 covers other issue. Any questions from members?
2 members have pressed the button. Mr. Tong Ni-che. Thank you. I'd like to ask about Section 30D brackets 1. Has reasonable cause to believe that an offense under Section 13 has been committed or is being committed in respect of any premises. There's an element of time here. For a period of time on the premises when the authority knows that an offense is being committed Can you tell us more about the element of time? If an offense is being committed, of course, then there won't be any issues. But what about the person stops or suspends in the middle of the commission of the offense? Does it mean you will issue the closure notice no matter what? So the person will write to you saying that he or she is not conducting the SPs, then you can cancel the closure notice. Is that correct? We have different views on the wording. Has been committed in respect of any premises and is being committed in respect of any premises. It's about the words used in the Chinese version. Can you tell us why you use this particular word in the Chinese version?
多謝主席，多謝議員嘅提問啦。咁其實
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Member, for your question. In Chinese, 正就某處所發生 that is happening on premises. In English, it is in respect of any premises. The phrase in respect of refers to the Chinese version, 早. That's why we decided to use the Chinese word 早 to refer to the English version in respect of. And what about the element of time? There are 2 situations. 1. Has been committed in respect of any premises. There's an element of time when the offense has been committed. Then the authority may issue closure notices. In relation to Mr. Tong Ni-che's question, I will reply and I'll see if the EPD has any follow-up. The policy objective is clear. I believe members understand the Chinese version. The authority may issue closure notices when an offense is being committed in respect of any premises. In some situations, the authority cannot tell for sure. Some works are being conducted on a continuous basis. Some works may be conducted on an intermittent basis. If it is something that happened in the past, I believe the authority may not issue closure notices. We do have a mechanism in place. That's exactly what I want the administration to tell us more. When someone commits an offense, when you receive tip-off, or when the offender knows that the authority may do something, then the offender may suspend the works. So the offender may perform the works on and off. That's a loophole. The administration should plug the loophole in order that no offender can abuse the mechanism by carrying out works on and off. I want to mention this because I don't want people to think that they can evade the responsibility by carrying out works on and off. That's why I mentioned an element of time. Next member, Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, Chairman. I have a suggestion. In Section 30D brackets 1, can we specify closure notice? It may issue a notice in respect of the premises. Can we add closure before notice? I've drawn reference from the Buildings Ordinance, Section 27, in brackets 1. It is settled clearly that a closure notice may be issued. That is clearer. Just now, our legal advisor made a good point. When will we invoke this ordinance? That is when one contravenes Section 13 by carrying out unlicensed SPs. It is a fact whether someone holds license or not. In Section 30D brackets 1, why do you set out if the authority has reasonable cause to believe someone either has a license or does not have a license? Mr. Allen Lai, let me take the point in relation to a notice. Why didn't we add the word closure? We can refer to the interpretation of the phrase closure notice under Section 30C. Closure notice means a notice issued under Section 30D brackets 1. And in the parts that follow, we can use notice to refer to closure notice. That is because a notice means one issued under Section 30D brackets 1. That's the logic we base on. Whether one holds a license or not, the EPD has the relevant information. When SPs are being conducted, one may be in the middle of renewing application or renewing licenses. So it may be the case that someone is operating SPs without a license. I'll give the floor to the EPD to give you more information. The EPD? Thank you. There are disputes over whether one holds a license or not. When one makes an application and before we approve the renewal of the license, does someone still hold a license? Well, someone holds a license, which is a valid license, but one can still lodge an appeal. which would make the validity of the license questionable. That's why we add the phrase, if the authority has reasonable cause to believe, then it is more appropriate for the authority to issue a notice under this circumstance. Mr. Kong, you mentioned under Section 30D brackets 2b, the closure notice is to contain the following information. There are a total of 5 elements. In the third element, a description of the specified process to which the offense relates. Can you really do it? You aren't at the scene. It's just an accusation. Can you really provide the third element? And do you really have the address of the subject premises or the address of the specified person of the subject premises? For cement plants or concrete plants, we then specified cement works. That's what we mean. Under the APC ordinance, there are 31 different kinds of cement works, and we specified cement works when they are really cement works. Depending on the location in which the cement works carry out cement works, we can refer to the land lot number provided by the land department. Say we can provide a DD, so on, to specify the location. There is no issue in relation to premises on land. In relation to C, there's a set of longitude and latitude used by the Marine Department. We can incorporate the relevant information on the form. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Thank you, Chairman. For the new Section 30D, the authority may issue closure notices. While we were discussing the policy objective or the policy intention, if the EPD needs to suspend the relevant works in case of any difficulties encountered, it's important to introduce the mechanism of Section 30D when the authority has reasonable cause to believe that an offense under Section 13 has been committed or is being committed in respect of any premises. A closure notice may be issued. Unlike other ordinances, one may have to go through the court to obtain a warrant from a magistrate or a judge in order to issue a notice. The administration did provide a reply, but you are simply belaboring the same point. You didn't tell us the legal basis. That is, a closure notice may be issued when the authority has reasonable cause to believe that an offense has been committed or is being committed. I remember in our previous discussion over policy issues, you mentioned a point. It might take a long time. Out of different reasons, there may be delays. But in emergency situations, especially where public interests are at stake, you can expedite the process. Can you tell us why you won't go to the court to obtain warrant from magistrates or judges? In your answer to the legal advisor, the paragraph was quite general. Can you tell us more about this practice? For different regulations, say the hotel and guest houses ordinances, the provisions are clearer. The authority may seek help from the magistrates or judges.
其實呢，
Thank you, Mr. Chen, for the questions. We are clear about the question that you have in mind. Maybe I'll try to describe the situation to you once again. About 3 years ago, I'm not going to pinpoint a particular case, but I just want to point out that we have repeatedly tried to sue a company for operations without a license, and we give them abatement notices. We have actually given them about 40 summonses, but the situation still continues, and they still have operations, and they try to play delaying tactics. So some district councils and the nearby residents have reflected the situation to us for the past 3 years continuously. So we can see that the nuisances caused by the operation is obnoxious, and it is not good for the citizens nearby as they breathe in the substances emitted by the operations. So generally, we think that under the current legislation, it is not possible for us to stop such operation immediately. We don't have the power right now, unfortunately, under the current legislation. That's why we have go for the amendment bill, and we would like to seek members' views and support so that we can amend the legislation so that we can issue closure notice in future. Well, the issue of closure notice, some of them are statutory, and some of them would have to go through to the court before we can issue the notice. For us, the focus is that we have an immediate need to cease such operations. I would like to emphasize that this is not something new. The DOJ has actually provided legal advice to us under Cap 12XC under the Buildings Ordinance. If there are dangerous buildings, they have the power to issue a statutory closure order. So the follow-up action will be taken. For Cap 132, the FEHD also has the power to issue a statutory order. They also have the power to issue court orders, as in the case of the building departments, because if they are talking about food poisoning issues, they have to close the premises immediately. So for FEHD, they also have a statutory order to close such operations. Whereas for us, we notice that there is a serious air pollution problem that is affecting the residents in the vicinity, and health issues will be caused. We think that there is an immediate need to cease the operation. So we want to make use of a statutory order. But we also have a mechanism to strike a balance. It is not unchecked power of the administration. We also have put in place an appeal mechanism and also a mechanism for the operator to apply for cancellation of the closure notice. We also provide statutory defense. These are provided in the further clauses we will discuss later. We also have the common law defense that are available, like due diligence. And during the appeal mechanism, if we lose the case, the appellant will receive a compensation. Well, the DOJ also told us that under the Basic Law and the Bill of Rights law, there is no inconsistency against such legislations. So that's why we think that there is a need to cease the operation immediately. And at the same time, we strike a balance. So we think this is an appropriate approach. Similar arrangements are available in other legislation. So I think what we are proposing is something proportionate and appropriate. DOJ, anything to supplement? Legal advisor? Well, as stated in my letter to the administration issued earlier, I am trying to ask the administration to explain to us why do they adopt this approach. That is, there is no need to go through the court before they issue a closure notice. For the explanation as to whether it is adequate and whether it is acceptable, that will be up to members to decide. But I want to point out that this is not something unique for this legislation. Please give me some time. Actually, in other relevant legislation concerning funeral arrangements, the FEHD can, according to Clause 17, they can also issue immediate closure of the premises, and also the notice concerned do not need to go through the court, and they do not have to go through the legal proceedings. Those are also similar statutory notices. So I would want to point out that the closure notice here is not unique, but it will up to member to decide whether the current scenario merits such a statutory closure notice. Well, thank you, legal advisor, for the supplement. I think the objective and the intention behind the statutory closure notice is clear. Well, I do agree that we got to have measures for the administration to cease unlicensed SP operation, which may cause immediate health impact and obnoxious nuisance to the residents. But I think the important point is to talk about the checks and balances. Maybe we can look at those at the subsequent clauses, and we can try to strike a balance. So on the one hand, we empower the authority to issue statutory closure notice, but it is not an unlimited power, but there is an appeal mechanism. And there are also other arrangements like the provision of defense, etc. Let's try to look at the thing holistically. I think if there are suitable measures, I think it is a feasible way. Ms. Doreen Kong. Chairman, personally, I don't think I'm convinced by the administration. Why do they have to bypass or not go through the court procedures before they issue a closure notice? I think the legal advisor has pointed out an example, but that may not be a very good example because you're talking about ashes. That is something more remote. I think it is a totally different example. I think for the current amendment bill, the affected premises will be closed and people cannot enter it. Even if they appeal, they lodge an appeal, but according to the proposed amendments, the closure notice is still in force, and the SP processes cannot be taken out, and no one can enter the premises. So they have to wait for the results of the appeal, and that may take a long time. So it is difficult for them to get rid of the closure notice. So I think if the authority has reasonable cause to believe, then they can issue the CN. I have some concern. For the SP process, some of them may affect the residents. We are fully aware of that because unlicensed SP operations will affect the citizens. Everyone is aware of that. But if you talk about dangerous buildings, like under the Buildings Ordinance, Clause 27, they have to go to the court in order to get a closure order. Well, I look at Appendix A, the reply from the administration. I don't think the administration has clearly explained the question raised by the legal advisor. we cannot just say that there are similar provisions in other pieces of legislation and there are provisions for statutory orders and notice as well. I don't think we should be going down that road. We can't justify the situation similar simply because similar provisions are available in other pieces of legislation. There may be public concern. Now you're amending CAP 311. They can issue statutory closure notice. You're actually setting a precedent. Well, I think maybe we should look at it this way. We have talked about this at the first meeting. The question is whether this is really setting a precedent. Administration? I would respond first and see if the DOJ has anything to supplement. Well, when we respond to Mr. Chan's question, we have pointed out that for CAP 128 bracket C for the Buildings Ordinance, section it's CAP 123. I made it wrong. And section 26 of that ordinance, it is stated that because it is a dangerous building, they do not go through a court order. They use a statutory order. So it is section 26 of CAP 123. For the FEHD, they are referring to CAP 132. They are talking about food poisoning. This also affects public health and life. It's a life and death matter. So they are also using statutory order to close the premises concerned. So we are not setting a precedent here. I would like to see if the DOJ has anything to add. No, thank you. I have a suggestion. We have let's take a break after scrutinizing Clause 30D. I think the administration has not covered parts 3, 4, 5 of 30D, but I think members have pointed out a critical issue. So the drafting and the operation, if there are no further discussion, I think we'll just refer to the usual way of doing things here. Do you accept the drafting? If not, you can propose a CSA or you can express your views during the voting. So let's carry on with the clause-by-clause examination. Thank you, Chairman. Let's move on to 30D, bracket 3. The clause concerns the closure notice. It is said that the copy of the closure notice has to be served to the specified person under Section 30E and also affixed at a conspicuous place on the subject premises. So that means we have to mail out the notice, and also EPD will arrange for the notice to be affixed at a conspicuous place on the subject premises. For Clause 4, it is pointed out that for the purpose of subsection Clause 2A, the authority may, by notice published in the Gazette, specify the form of the closure notice. And for Clause 5, it is similar to Clause 4. It highlights that a notice published under subsection 4 is not subsidiary legislation, which means the form does not need to go through negative vetting, and it can be amended by the authority through notice published in the Gazette. So I just talked about 30D subsection 345. Any questions from members? Ms. Doreen Kong? For 3B, subsection 3B, it says the copy of the closure notice has to be affixed at a conspicuous place on the subject premises by the authority. If it is an SP operation at sea on a ship or a barge, so what will be the case meant by conspicuous place then? We have thought about that. If the SP operation is conducted on ship, then we will affix the notice to the body of the ship. There is a place for people to get onto the ship, so that will be a conspicuous place because you have to go through the plan to enter the ship. So that will be considered as a conspicuous place in the case of a ship. Any questions on subsection 345 of 30D? If not, let's break for 5 minutes and resume at 11:05.